What is up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the Numbers. These are my Dana White's Contender Series breakdown and predictions for week number 10.
I need all the wins, yeah. Harder than all that is. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out.
And we are back for another Dana White's Contender Series breakdown and prediction video. This week we are breaking down week number 10, which is the season finale, and we have a very special 6-fight card due to we had the Lucas Hacha and Davibit fight called off last week, and now they're actually fighting this week on week 10. So we have a 6-fight card, which is going to be awesome. I think it's a great way to kind of end the season here. It's been a fun season overall, and I think this is going to be a fun card. Before we get into it, if you guys can please do me a favor, please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I always appreciate all the likes, all the comments, and yeah, look out for some UFC content this week as well. We have UFC Vegas 81 coming up this week, and then the week after we have UFC 294 pay-per-view. Charles Oliveira, Islam Makhachev, very good cards coming up here, so make sure you do subscribe so you don't miss out on all of that. But I say we get into it here, and we're going to start with the first fight on the 6-fight Dana White's Contender Series card, and we have Lucas Hacha going against Davibit. And yeah, I taped this fight last week, and I actually taped it, and then I went on Twitter and I saw that 3 hours after I already researched it, the fight was called off, and I was very upset because, you know, taping these DWCS fights, they take a lot longer than some of the UFC fights. And luckily, I did not delete my notes, so thank goodness I didn't have to, type all my notes out again. So yeah, glad that they ended up making this fight on this week number 10 here, and looking forward to it. And I was looking forward to it, last week as well. So this is gonna be a very fun fight. So we'll start with Lucas Hacha. He is 23 years old, 5'2", 16-1, and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. We have Davibit. He is 28 years old, 5'4", 14-3, and 5-0. in his last 5 fights. And by the way, some books might have Davibit as Davi Costa, but on Tapology and UFC Stats, he's going as Davibit there. But some books have him as Davi Costa for some reason. So we'll start with Lucas Hacha here. This is a guy that, in terms of notable wins or losses, not any really. I don't think he's fought like the worst competition in the world, though. Lucas Hacha has a 81% finish rate, 56% of those coming by knockout, and 25% of those coming by submission. And some notes I have on Hacha, he's pretty small for the division at 5'2", which has to be like one of the smaller flyweights if he was to get into the UFC there. But yeah, 5'2" there, and he's going to be at a 2-inch height disadvantage there. But Hacha, he has hard leg kicks, good combinations, very good volume from Hacha as well. He comes forward and he brings pressure. I like his style on the feet, and he always brings an exciting fight. I think this fight's going to be very fun. Both these guys are very exciting. His cardio is really good, and he seems to get better and better as the fight goes on. Seems to kind of grow into the fight a little bit. I have seen him hurt before, and he has been knocked out in his one and only loss, so his durability might be something to maybe worry about here on the Hacha side. He does have power for a flyweight, and he isn't afraid to eat one, to give one in there, and those kind of make for the most exciting fighters to watch. I did see him get his back taken in his last fight, but he did a really good job at defending. But he was able to, he stayed there the whole round, and his opponent was able to go out there and control him, and wasn't able to really get back up or do much about it. And I did see him get put in a couple of bad spots on the mat as well, but he was able to survive every single time. But see him put in those bad spots, not the greatest look there. And he can grapple offensively himself, but he's definitely submission over position, and I've seen him lose position multiple times and end up on bottom. So yeah, I think Hacha's pretty decent here. As far as Davibit, aka Davi Costa, whatever you want to call him, he's training out of Daniel Oliveira methodology. This is a guy, in terms of notable wins or losses, I'd say nobody at all. Pretty rough competition, to be honest, for the most part for Bittencourt. He does have an 86% finish rate for flyweights. These guys are really good finishers, and Bittencourt has finished 43% of his wins by knockout and 43% of his wins by submission, so kind of an equal opportunity finisher there. Davibit is a kill or be killed fighter. He's only been to decision 2 times in his entire career, 17 fights, which is not your typical flyweight there. And he's been finished in all 3 of his losses, which, durability is a concern here for Bittencourt. And, and really Hacha as well. Durability for both these guys is definitely something to be wary of here. Bittencourt can wrestle, and he's pretty good on top. He does a really good job at, getting fights down to the mat when he wants to. He's dangerous on the ground, and he's finished the majority of his wins there. He's not too bad. I really like what I see from Bittencourt. Solid wrestling, solid grappling. He can wrestle relentlessly for 15 minutes, and he'll attempt a ton of takedowns if need be. The durability worries me a little bit, like I said, but it worries me a little bit on both sides here. I think this is a pretty close fight overall, and the line definitely does indicate that. We have Hacha sitting at -120, Bittencourt sitting at +100. I imagine this line might flip. I see a lot of people on the Davibit Bittencourt side, so we'll have to kind of monitor it. But yeah, I think it's a pretty close fight here. I think it's a tough fight to call overall, hence the odds. And I think it could probably go either way, but I like Bittencourt here a little bit more. I think he has a path to victory here in this one, and that path to victory is going to be getting this fight down to the mat and controlling here. I've seen Hacha get taken down so many times, and I've seen Hacha get put into a bunch of bad spots on the mat, and I think Bittencourt will be able to take advantage here. Give me Bittencourt here to win this fight. And I'll say he does end up getting a finish here. I think it comes late in the fight. I'll say a second or third round submission here for Davibit Bittencourt. But very fun fight nonetheless. Kind of a tough fight to call to kick off the card, but a very fun one there to kick off week 10. All right, moving on to the next fight. We have Isakov going against Marquel Maderos. We'll start with Isakov. He is 30 years old, 5'9", 10-2, and 4-1. In his last 5 fights. We got Maderos. He's 26 years old, 5'10", 7-1, and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. We'll start with Isakov here. In terms of notable wins or losses, it's been solid for Isakov, actually. He's fought some pretty solid fighters throughout his career, consistently throughout his career, in his wins and his losses. He even has a little bit of an amateur background as well, so level of competition for Isakov is pretty solid there. Isakov is a solid finisher as well. He has a 60% knockout rate, 20% submission rate for Isakov, for an 80% finish rate overall. And some notes I have here on Isakov. Isakov has a lot of experience. Not only does he have 12 professional fights, but he has about 20 amateur fights as well. So this guy has a ton of experience, which you love to see. Isakov has some decently fast hands, and he does a really good job at mixing up the target on the feet, to the body, to the head as well. His volume is pretty high, and I like that. His striking defense isn't the best, especially when he starts to get tired. His hands will kind of drop, and he'll eat shots, but he's a tough guy. He can take a shot. He really sits down on his punches and throws with a ton of power. What I noticed, going throughout his career and watching his career, he seems to be putting a lot more into his shots as of late, like really sitting down on those punches and trying to take off his opponent's head on the feet. But I'll say primarily he is looking to wrestle. He does a lot of wrestling, and he's pretty good at it. I think he's a pretty good wrestler. When he does get fights down to the mat, he does a really good job controlling opponents. If his opponents get back up, he does a really good job at pushing them against the cage and winning minutes against the cage. Like, this guy can go out there and win a bunch of minutes against the cage there. I've seen him pick guys up and slam them to the mat. And I like what I see from Isakov in the wrestling department. Wrestling's good. The control's good. The submission game's really good. If his opponents do end up getting back up, he's good at either holding them against the cage and then eventually dragging them back down. And I really like his grappling as well, the ability to get the fight down to the mat, get into dominant positions, and he's pretty good on top. I think Isakov's really good. As far as Maderos, he is training out Factory X Muay Thai, good gym there. Notable wins or losses, he did lose to Jacoby Jones as an amateur back in 2019, and that was by decision. Jacoby Jones, we did see him fight this year on the Contender series. So Maderos has a 71% finish rate. All of those come by knockout, no subs on his record. Maderos pressures early, and he's very active with the leg kicks. His leg kicks are nasty, and I've seen him hurt guys with those leg kicks, seen him drop guys with those leg kicks, and it's a big part of his game, the kicks of Maderos there. I like the pressure that he brings to the table and how high volume he is as well. He's in your face pretty much at all times. His chin may be a little bit questionable, though. I have seen him drop before, and although I think he's a really good striker, I really do, he doesn't look all too comfortable on the feet at times. It's weird, and he'll borderline panic wrestle in there. He's a striker for the most part, but he'll go for a lot of takedowns. He's not the worst wrestler in the world, but that's not really his game in my opinion, especially here in this matchup. I don't see him having any success against Isakov in the wrestling department, but he shoots a lot of takedowns, Maderos. His takedown defense does look solid from what I've seen, but this is definitely going to be his toughest test in the wrestling department here. And like I said, Maderos can go out there and get takedowns, but not here in my opinion. His ground and pound is vicious if he is able to get on top, but like I said, I don't think he has the best ground game in the world. His opponents are typically able to get back up each and every time he does take him down, unless it hurts him, gets on top, and then he can TKO him. So final thoughts on this matchup. Both guys are pretty solid, but I like Isakov here. I think Isakov is going to be able to kind of dictate where this fight takes place, and I absolutely think Isakov's going to have the advantage once this fight hits the mat. His cardio worries me a tad, but I think he can win enough minutes here early on in the wrestling to win himself a decision. I do expect this fight to play out relatively closely here. So we see the odds. We have Isakov -160, Maderos +130. I think those odds are pretty spot on there. I would lean Isakov very, very slight favorite. Maderos is not bad at all. Really like the striking, but I think it's kind of a tough matchup here, and I think Isakov should get the better of the wrestling exchanges. So give me Isakov to win this fight by decision. All right, moving on to the next fight, we have Yuri Panfarov going against Torres Finy. We'll start with Yuri. He is training out of Ultimate MMA. This guy is 27 years old, 6 foot, 6-0 and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. We have Finy. Finy is 24 years old, 5'7", 6-0 and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. So let's start with Panfarov, Yuri Panfarov. This is a guy, like I said, he's training at Ultimate MMA. In terms of notable wins or losses, none at all. He's actually not fought somebody with a winning record yet. So very, very concerning level of competition there for Panfarov. Panfarov has a 100% finish rate. Panfarov has never been the distance yet in his entire career. 17% knockout rate for Panfarov, and then an 87% submission rate. So some notes I have on Panfarov, like I said, his competition is very, very questionable. This will be by far the best win Panfarov has ever got if he was to go out there and beat Finy. His opponent's combined record is 14-20, and in 3 of his 6 wins, those guys had 0 wins on their record at the time of fighting him. So very, very bad competition. He's actually not been out of the first round yet, as far as I'm concerned. He's very dangerous once he gets the fight down to the mat, but there are going to be question marks about what happens if this fight does get extended. His solid wrestling for Panfarov. He's able to get fights down to the mat on top. He has great control and grappling as well. He looks to get the fight down to the mat early and often, and usually does so with little to no resistance. He's able to get to the back of his opponent very well, and once he does, the fights are typically over shortly after. I've also seen him go out there, get into mount, and land some pretty vicious ground and pound as well, and get his opponent out of there. It's hard to tell how good he is, and that's the tough thing about some of these DWCS guys, because you go and watch them, right, and they look amazing. They look flawless, and then you look at who they're fighting. It's like, come on. It's just hard to tell how good Panfarov is. He looks great, but he's fighting some low level guys and destroying them, and again, that doesn't tell me much. There are some question marks here about his cardio if this fight does get late. And what happens if this fight gets late? Is he going to slow down? What's his gas tank like? There's just a lot of question marks, a lot of unknowns about Yuri Panfarov. But yeah, I think he's decent. I was impressed with him, and I think he's a problem on the mat, on the ground. So we'll see how good he actually is when he fights an actual opponent in Torres Finy here. So Torres Finy, this is a guy who, in terms of notable wins or losses, no notable wins or losses, but much better competition than Yuri. He's going out there and fighting actual guys. He has a 100% finish rate as well. Both these guys do. 83% finish rate for Torres Finy, or thereby knockout. This guy hits like an absolute truck. Actually, Torres Finy does have 1 decision, so he has an 83% knockout rate, and he does have 1 decision there. My bad. So that's good. That's good though, because we know he can go 15 minutes. So some notes I have here on Torres Finy. He's very, very small for middleweight in terms of height, but this guy is built like an absolute fridge. This guy is jacked. He's kind of looking like William Knight out there. But yeah, I think this guy's a lot better than William Knight personally. He starts really, really quick and looks to find the finish early on. This guy shoots out of a cannon in a lot of his fights. He doesn't really strike much, which kind of surprised me. I thought this guy was like some big knockout guy, and but he's pretty much looking to go for takedowns as soon as the fight starts. And a lot of the fights I watched, he was looking to wrestle like instantly, which I thought was very interesting. And he's a very strong wrestler, and I think he has a wrestling background as well, so it all makes sense. He gets the fights down to the mat with little to no resistance. This guy is an absolute tank. His top control is very good, and he has just absolutely devastating ground and pound, and he's very active at the ground and pound as well. He completely dismantled his last opponent. He took him down, and he had to have landed at least like 75 to 100, maybe more ground strikes. The ref just wouldn't stop the fight for some reason. I kind of felt bad for his opponent, but it showed that Finy can go out there and just dominate somebody, and he landed so many ground strikes there, heavy ground strikes as well. Believe it or not, like I said, he's actually been to decision, which is good, and his cardio didn't look completely terrible. So we've seen him go 15 minutes. His cardio didn't look completely terrible, and he was able to win that entire fight, controlling his opponent the entire time. So I was very impressed there with Torres Finy there. Final thoughts on this matchup. So right off the bat, I want to talk about the odds. These odds really surprised me, not because I'm picking Yuri here, but because I thought a lot of people would be. You look on Tapology, you have Yuri Panov. He has the polar bear hat on. His nickname is the Russian polar bear, which is an incredible nickname. And I thought, a lot of people would be all over this guy, and they kind of are. It looks like on Tapology, like 70% of people are picking this guy. And I think a lot of that has to do with that outfit, because that is an incredible outfit there for Yuri Panov. But I like Torres Finy. But to be honest, I was expecting him to probably be at least an underdog, but that is not the case. But I do like him here quite a bit. So we have it's a grappler versus grappler matchup, in my opinion. They both have not fought the best competition, but Finy has easily fought the better competition between the two. And it all is going to come down to who's able to get takedowns here and get on top. I'm not sure Panov is going to be able to take down a refrigerator. And I don't know if you guys have moved a refrigerator before, but moving a refrigerator is not the easiest thing to do. So I'm not sure Panov is going to be able to do it. I kind of feel like Finy is going to be the one getting on top here. And I also like that Finy has seen a second, a third, and even been to decision, whereas Panov has not. Give me Finy to win this fight. I'll actually say, does he finish Panov? I'll say he does finish Panov. I'll say he does get him out there late in the fight. Third round TKO for Torres Finy here. But yeah, like I said, the odds kind of surprised me just because I thought a lot of people would be all over the Russian polar bear, but apparently not. All right, moving on to the next fight. This fight is going to be phenomenal. We have Jerrick Farias going against Conor Matthews. We'll start with Farias. He is 30 years old, 5'11", 10-0 and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Conor Matthews, 31 years old, 5'8", with a 71-inch reach, 4-1 in his last 5. So he has a 71-inch reach, and he is 6-1 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. There we go, fixed it there. All right, so we'll start with Farias. This is a guy that is training out Fighting Nerds. Fighting Nerds, a gym that has been very hot this season on DWCS. I believe the Fighting Nerds have had 2 guys come in here on the Contender Series, both guys as underdogs, and both guys went out there and got a contract. So Fighting Nerds has been on fire on DWCS thus far this season, so you love to see that. This is a guy in Farias who has a 90% finish rate overall. 70% of those wins come by knockout. 20% of those wins come by submission. Notable wins or losses, none really. Hasn't fought complete bums, though. So Farias, he's pretty big for a featherweight at 5'11", and he is going to have a size advantage here in this matchup. He's going to have a 3-inch height advantage here. Farias is very long, very rangy, and uses that to his advantage. He's very active with the kicks. He can be a little bit low volume, but he has some serious power for the vision, and when he pressures, he's an absolute problem. The cardio is very good for Farias as well. We have seen him taken down and controlled for a good bit, and he didn't really look too comfortable on the mat off his back. The ground game could be an issue here for Farias. He seems to get taken down super easy. He does an okay job in terms of getting back up, but there's not a ton of footage available. And I'm watching fights of this guy, but the fights I'm watching are like years ago. And you got to think, training at a gym like Fighting Nerds, we got to expect some improvements here. But I was watching fights for 4 or 5 years ago because there's not a lot of recent fights out there, and his ground game doesn't look great. But training with Fighting Nerds, they've got some really good grapplers there. I think we can expect some improvements there, but I'm just going off of kind of what I see. You know, he's losing pretty much the entire fight of one of the fights I watched, just getting taken down, controlled. It wasn't the best look in the world. And then late third round, his opponent pretty much quit. I guess he got hurt his ankle or leg or something, but he ended up getting the win there. So yeah, so that fight wasn't the best look. And other than that, there's not a lot of tape out there on Farias, but you know, from what I saw on the feed, this guy's an absolute problem. And if we can keep seeing an improved version of this Farias guy, I mean, this guy can be a problem. He's very long for the division, very big for the division, and he has just unreal power. So yeah, I did like what I saw from Farias outside of the ground game. But like I said, you got to think he's improving that at a really good gym in Fighting Nerds. As far as Conor Matthews, he's training out of the New England Cartel, which we actually have a New England Cartel guy making his debut on short notice against Terrence McKinney, UFC Vegas 81 this week, which is going to be pretty fun to watch there. But yeah, Conor Matthews out of the New England Cartel. In terms of notable wins or losses for Conor Matthews, he lost to Francis Marshall last year on Dana White's Contender Series in one of the biggest beatings I think I've ever seen in my life. And then he also beat Jay Ellis, who is now 16-108 and should consider potentially not fighting anymore. Jay Ellis, what are you doing? But anyway, Conor Matthews has a 91% or a 100% finish rate. 17% of those come by knockout, 83% by submission. This guy has never won a decision. He's been to decision once, and it was that Francis Marshall fight. So some notes I have on Conor Matthews here. And by the way, when I did see that Conor Matthews was fighting, I was actually really looking forward to seeing him fight, because I remember that Marshall fight being fun to watch. It was kind of hard to watch actually, but it was a fun fight. But it was just a one-sided beatdown there. Francis Marshall just absolutely annihilated him. And to be honest, I went back and watched the fight. I don't think there is much you can take from the fight. We learned that he's extremely tough and nearly impossible to get out of there. He has a ton of heart, but I mean, that's about all he showed. He showed some toughness, some heart, and that's about it. I'm not sure what the game plan was for Matthews in the Marshall fight. I'm really not. You know, was there even a game plan other than, you know, eating punches for 15 minutes with his face? What shocked me was Matthews attempted 0 takedowns. 0 takedowns against Marshall. I don't know. That was just a shocking game plan. Marshall actually took him down 6 times. The Marshall fight was the first time we ever saw Marshall leave the first round. Marshall does have 4 finishes out of his 6 wins that happened in less than 60 seconds. Matthews has shown some grappling, but against very, very, very low-level competition, such as Jay Ellis. Pretty much a complete wildman in there, just with no process. Like, it looks like he has no process, just nothing, no process, no game plan. He just goes out there and bum rushes guys, and that's not going to work at this level. I feel like we don't know much about Marshall still, other than he's next level tough. Like, going out there and beating Jay Ellis, I mean, that tells you nothing. So I don't know. I have no idea what to think of this matchup. I really don't. In theory, Matthews may have a path to victory here with the grappling, but I can't really trust him to do that. I mean, shooting 0 takedowns against Francis Marshall was not the best look, and he hasn't shown to be able to take down anybody other than like Jay Ellis. I don't know. And like I said, if Farias is going out there making improvement, like, I think Conor Matthews could be in trouble here. Matthews is going to be very dangerous though early, but I'm not sure he's going to finish Farias that easily. I'm really not. Farias is training at a great gym and Fighting Nerds, and like I said, I think he's going to be making some rapid improvements. I thought initially I might take the shot here on Conor Matthews, but I really can't do it. I'm not sure that his heart and toughness is going to be enough to win this fight here for him. So he's super tough, but that's about it, to be honest. Whereas Farias, I think Farias is very skilled. He's very big, very long, and he hits like a truck, and he's a really good striker. So I think the more skilled fighter is Farias there. So give me Farias to win this fight. I don't think anybody's finishing Conor Matthews. So give me Farias to win this fight by decision here. All right, moving on to the next fight. We have Andre Lima going against Rixen Zenem. We'll start with Andre Lima. This is a guy who's 24 years old, 5'7", 6-0, and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Zenem, this guy is 24 years old, 5'7", 14-1, and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. So we'll start with Andre Lima here. Andre Lima is training out, let's see here. He's training out of Team Lucas Minera. In terms of notable wins or losses, no notable wins or losses for Lima. He does have an 83% finish rate. All 83% of those by knockout. No submissions on the record for Lima. In terms of some notes I have on Andre Lima, he looks like he has a kickboxing background and he has a brown belt in BJJ. Andre Lima did miss weight in his last fight, but was able to see the weigh-ins for Contender Series. He made weight good, so that was good. Lima is very active with the leg kicks, and he manages distance very well. His strike and defense is absolutely on point. He does a good job at countering his opponents and throwing combinations. Hands are fast and accurate. He does a good job at pressuring his opponents, but that does lead to him getting taken down a lot. Lima has very sneaky power for a flyweight, and he has finished the majority of his wins by knockout. For a flyweight, this guy hits like an absolute truck there. I have seen him taken down, but he's very active on his back, and he can definitely lose minutes on bottom. His takedown defense and his get-up game could potentially be a problem, but I imagine that's something he has been working on. He has shown some improvements in the grappling in his last fight, and that's something that we're going to expect out of Andre Lima. This guy's only 24 years old. Each and every time we see this guy in the cage, we're going to see improvements. I like the fact that he's a brown belt now. I like the fact that he has that kickboxing background, and like I said, I think this guy's going to keep getting better and better. So he did. I think it was his last fight. He did go for a submission. He went for a couple submissions. He's very active with the offensive submissions, but he did lose position a couple times that I didn't like to see. He was taken down a few times in his LFA fight. I'm not sure if that was the fight 1 or 2 or maybe 3 fights ago. But yeah, he got taken out a few times in his LFA fight, and they did get a takedown himself, and then eventually got on top and won the fight by second round knockout. I think guys are going to be looking to take him down. A lot of people do look to take down Lima. Lima's a problem on the feet, and his ground game is certainly coming along, I'd say. So yeah, I'm impressed with Lima. The guy's only 24 years old. I think he has a decent ceiling here. As far as Zenem, he's training out of Familia Zenem. He is, in terms of notable wins or losses, he did knock out Carlos Huachin in his last fight by second round knockout. Huachin was in the UFC. A couple years ago, wasn't too great. His only loss comes to Rodrigo Vera, who is a pretty good fighter and is currently 15-1. So Zenem, as well as Lima, has a pretty good finish rate here, 85%. 14% of those by knockout, 71% of those coming by submission. Solid submission game for Zenem. So notes I have here on Zenem, he throws very powerful kicks to the legs and the head, does a lot of backing up, and he can be pretty low volume here. I think I definitely prefer the striking of Andre Lima here, absolutely. He loves throwing flying knees and throwing knees at the middle, and he knocked out Huachin with a knee. I think it might have been a flying knee or just a knee up the middle in his last fight against Huachin, which was a very good knockout win to have against a UFC guy that fought in the UFC against Huachin. So Zenem has solid wrestling and ability to get the fight down to the mat. His grappling is very slick. I know Lima is a BJJ brown belt, but I prefer the grappling of Zenem here. I think Zenem is going to be the better grappler in this matchup. He has finished the majority of his wins by submission, and I think he'll be looking to grapple heavily here. I feel like Zenem is going to be outmatched on the feet, but he does have a path to victory here in this one. So these odds are fairly wide here. Minus 260 for Lima, or I just refreshed my book. Minus 275 now for Lima, and then plus 200, anywhere from plus 215, 220 even for Zenem here. So final thoughts on this matchup. I think it's a close fight. Pretty much a striker versus grappler matchup. Although Zenem can strike a little bit and Lima can grapple a little bit, Zenem is going to look to get the fight down to the mat early and often, and I expect him to have some success in doing so. I did not like what I saw from Lima's takedown defense, and I did not like seeing Lima lose a lot of minutes off his back as well. So I'm actually going to take Zenem to win this fight by a pretty close and competitive decision. I think the path's there, but like I said, Lima could potentially be making significant improvements, and that kind of scares me here because I think absolutely the better striker here is Lima. So I'm actually really surprised that Zenem is this big of a dog, but maybe it's the cool hat there Lima's wearing, because he is wearing a very, very cool hat. But give me Zenem to win by decision there. All right, next we have the main event, and a very, very good main event here. We have Cortavius, Are You Not Entertained, Romeus going against Raymon. Tavares. We'll start with Cortavius. Are you not entertained? Romeus, this guy's 29 years old, 5'4", with a 7-1 record. He's 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Tavares, he is 29 years old, 5'8", 70-inch reach, 4-1. What am I doing? So his record is 8-2. It's been a long season, guys. It's been a long season there. 8-2, and he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. So we'll start with Cortavius. Are you not entertained, Romeus? Which is one of the best nicknames I've ever seen. He trains out of St. Charles MMA. This is a guy, in terms of notable wins or losses, he did beat nasty Nate Williams by first-round armbar in his last fight, and that was in June. Romeus has a 86% finish rate, 28% of those coming by knockout, 56% of those coming by submission. Some notes I have here on Romeus. Romeus starts very, very fast. He comes forward throwing big shots. He's aggressive and keeps the volume high. This guy is just a complete wild man on the feet, and he's very fun to watch. He is 100% all action. He throws hard body and head kicks. Really like what I see from Romeus there. Really aggressive striking there from Romeus. Ultimately, Romeus is looking to take the fight down to the mat, and that's where I think he is his best. He can be taken down, but he threatens with submissions, and he has a very, very active guard and a very good submission game as well. He was able to get an armbar win off his back in his last fight against nasty Nate Williams, like I said, which is nice to see. He can wrestle himself, and he's very active on top, works his way to dominant positions very nicely. He loves the armbar, and he's finished 3 of his wins by armbar, and the other submission win is a rear naked choke. I was very entertained, obviously, from what I saw from Romeus, and I think he's a very well-rounded fighter, and I think he's very good everywhere. As far as Raymon, Tavares, this guy is training out of Bulldog Boxing. Notable wins or losses, he did beat Martin Day by submission. Martin Day is now 8-7. And then he did lose to Surly City on DWCS week number 5 by first-round knockout, and it was a very questionable stoppage. I did pick City to beat Tavares in that fight. Was thinking more so maybe a late finish or decision, but City ended up knocking him out with like a couple minutes of the fight. But the stoppage was fairly questionable there. So Tavares is a finisher, 88% finish rate for Tavares, 50% by knockout, and 30% or 38% by submission there. So some notes I have here on Tavares. He's not fought the best competition in the world outside of City, which, City, it is what that fight is what it is. But he has been knocked out in both of his losses. So he's a guy that I want to say is kind of borderline kill or be killed. A guy that when he is winning, he is finishing. When he's losing, he is getting finished there. But Tavares has a very pressure-heavy style on the feet, very heavy kicks to the body, and swings for the fences on all of his punches. Takes his time in there, though. He's composed, and he hits very hard. This guy has some serious power for a bantamweight. I mean, this guy's power is no joke. And I know Romeus hits hard himself, but Tavares is probably the harder hitter. This is a guy that just continuously knocks down his opponents. He's knocked down his opponents and out multiple times. He attacks the body with relentless pressure. He wasn't able to knock down this guy, James Dunn, 3 times before getting him out of there. And I went to his Instagram, and it said he has 10 knockdowns, something crazy in his fight, 10 knockdowns or something, which in 10 fights, that's pretty dang good, especially at bantamweight there. And like I said, he was able to finish Martin Day in the first round, which Martin Day, he was a UFC fighter, not the best fighter, but, finishing a guy that was in the UFC and doing so in the first round when, it's a good win. It's a solid win. I didn't see much of his grappling, though, outside of submitting Martin Day in the first round, but he'll want to keep this one standing, that's for sure, here against Romeus. So final thoughts on this matchup. We have Romeus minus 215, Tavares plus 175. I have a lot of concerns about Tavares in this matchup. For starters, he was just knocked out literally over a month ago, and he wasn't knocked out, but he was, clearly knocked down. He was dropped. He was hurt. Secondly, I have no clue what Tavares looks like on the mat at all for the most part. I know you submitted Martin Day, but it is what it is. And Romeus is just absolutely no joke on the ground. I think Romeus has multiple paths to victory here. I think Romeus can find a KO here in this one, find a submission here in this one, or even win enough minutes in the grappling to earn himself a decision. I can see any method here for Romeus. So I like Romeus to get his hand raised here either way. Officially, I'll say I don't know. I wish you could bet on whether or not you could be entertained, because I think you will be entertained here. But I'll say decision here for Romeus, but I think he can knock him out. I think he can win by any method possible there. So give me Romeus here to win the fight. And the last fight of Dana White's Contender Series, week number 10 here. So your 6-fight card. Took a little bit longer breaking down than usual, but you had an extra fight. So thank you all so much for watching. Let me know who you guys like down in the comments. Be sure to subscribe, like, and then be sure to be on the lookout for some UFC Vegas 81 content. And yeah, guys, thank you guys for a fun season. Appreciate all the support during the season. You know, everybody that signed up on the website, dfsbythenumbers.com, for the extra content. And even just leaving a like or leaving a positive comment as well always go a very long way. And they are always greatly appreciated here. So best of luck, everybody. Enjoy the fight. Should be a fun 6-fight card on Tuesday. And we'll talk to y'all soon. See you later.